Every city in every country is different. If you don't get a sense of that and go into another city just kind of being like, yeah, I'm me and I'm doing whatever I want, it's not going to work out well for you either, right? So it's just like being a tourist somewhere. You need to be respectful of these places you enter.
Ever wonder how top DJs actually built their careers?
I had to do 15 years of hard work to get any of the recognition that I wanted.
Where I saw a turning point in my career is when I became true to myself.
From marketing and mindset to networking and negotiation, I'm giving you the tools you need to build a lasting career in dance music.
Give them bits of you and your everyday life.
You have to change the way you view the word no. Like me, I'm encouraged by it.
Join me, Olivia Mancuso, and industry leaders as we reveal what it really takes to turn your passion into profit. This is Elevated Frequencies. Welcome to your weekly elevation, your dose of real strategies for real results in dance music. I'm Olivia, and today's conversation offers a rare, unfiltered look into the realities of building a DJ career that spans from Chicago's intimate venues to international stages. This interview takes us beyond the glossy surface of what DJ life seems like to explore what it really means to build something lasting in this industry, from the financial realities of losing thousands on a single show to navigating the social dynamics that determine opportunities both locally and globally. We talk about what it's like to feel like you're sitting at the side lunch table while watching the cool kids from afar, and how that experience shapes an artist's journey across different scenes. What makes this conversation so valuable is its honesty about both Chicago's unique landscape and the universal challenges DJs face worldwide. There's no sugarcoating here, just raw insights about what it takes to persevere in an industry that can be simultaneously rewarding and brutal. So let's dive in. You've been described as like the guardian of Chicago's underground sound.
The Guardian.
I saw that somewhere.
Gosh, like the Guardians of the Galaxy kind of thing.
Yeah.
I would never claim that. There's so many people that did really significant things and are still doing stuff that I think is more protective of like underground sounds. It's definitely my roots. That's what inspired me. But yeah, I'm still just kind of a typical DJ. I don't feel like I'm necessarily at a place also that I can be like, well, I'm only going to do these shows that have maybe these values or maybe have a certain aesthetic to them. I'm not at the like picky choosy level yet, but
Really?
Music-wise, I'm all over the place too, right? Like I don't necessarily know what is like cool or, you know, this thing could have like kind of gone over and jumped the shark and be considered EDM or pop by some people. But to me, it's like a great track still, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of don't get mixed into what genre it's necessarily flying under, or if it's like kind of cool factor or not. You start not listening to everything that way, music-wise. So, but yeah, I'll take that. That's a pretty nice compliment, I think. So,
And I think it's valid. I think it's more than the music. I think it's also the culture. I think you represent Chicago's culture very well. And, you know, when I play the guessing game of where's that DJ from, you have that distinct style about you. And maybe that's, you've credited like your mentors in this industry a lot. Do you think that's where it comes from?
I think so. I think that's a very Chicago thing, though. I think so many artists, you got to be a little bit proud of what everyone has done before you, and especially what your peers are doing at the same time. And like, Chicago's a city that pretty much everybody knows each other in some capacity, whether you get along or not, or you think so-and-so is crazy or something. There's some adjacency and we've like run into each other. So being aware of what's happening in your city, and then if you go to other places, representing that in some way, whether it's playing your homie's track that they just finished last week and you're excited to test it out and see if and come back to them and be like, yo, it was a total dud when I played that. I thought it was great, but like when I played it, I think it needs a little bit of work. So at the same time, like when I had started, I was like a drum and bass DJ and really like obsessed with everything that wasn't Chicago. And so coming back around and deciding that I didn't have to be so like punk rock and anti-establishment about everything, and like this is actually good. Just because it's like popular amongst my friends doesn't mean that it's like pop music, right? So
That's growth.
That took a while though, right? Like I was like, this isn't edgy. I can't play this. This isn't cool. But then you end up being like, well, that set wasn't really good because you're just thinking about like the wrong things, right? You're like, oh, is this being played by like Marcel Detman, or, you know, is this what Berghain is playing right now? And the set suffers because you're not really responding to what the crowd wants. But at the same time, you can't just play what the crowd wants because that's not what they want. They want you to bring additional things and new things, and they're going to get bored of you really fast if you're just constantly adjusting. Because if that were true, we would play Drake all the time, right? Or what is kind of the most popular thing. And maybe Drake makes sense sometimes, but yeah, that's kind of your job as a DJ to make those decisions.
I'm glad you brought that up because I was thinking at Miami Music Week, and I won't say who, it doesn't matter, but there were some sets that I was really surprised was just like a tech house greatest hits, of the past 6 weeks of Beatport. And I'm like, this is a fucking snooze fest, right?
I've been there though, where you think that's what you're supposed to do, right? Especially like Music Week. I've just saved up 2 months and totally gonna run up my credit cards on like sandwiches, and you got to make this count. So you have this one set, and you're gonna have a different set of eyes on you that maybe you normally wouldn't have, and you kind of overthink the set, and maybe you end up playing all your own music, right? Which is fine, but you better have a lot of music then if you're going to make sure that the crowd is having a good time. And I think there's different schools of thought, right? I think Chicago is also a unique place that I'd say a lot of us came up through the club scene. And so we started off taking shows that we had to play top 40. We had to deal with the person asking for a request, or we're just opening for some giant DJ we're like scared to even make like eye contact with. And we're there to like keep the crowd before they go on. And so when you have those chances to kind of maybe go and do your own thing, sometimes you overthink it and jump to that other side severely. I maybe still do that sometimes, but it's also like the night will show you, right? Like most people that are either musicians or in the industry, there's generally a high degree of like empathy, right? You as a person have to be able to read people's emotions, good time, comfort, safety, and once you start scaling that for a bigger room, that it comes at you, right? Like you start focusing that one person that's like playing on their phone and they're like, oh man, they're totally hating this. And you start ignoring the other 80% that are having a great time. So that I think is just, I think that's like a weekly challenge for DJs to make sure like you're making sure everyone has a good time, the show does well, and you're playing something appropriate for whatever event you've been booked at, right?
It's a constant balance.
It's a constant balance.
Between wanting to, like you said, push new sounds and show them something new, but to get that immediate feedback from a crowd, good or bad, can either be intoxicating or just, especially if you grew up like being bullied, right? Like
sure.
I that's why I can't fathom being a DJ, because of how bad that I was bullied as a kid.
Yeah.
I feel like
that'll make you a better DJ, actually.
Well, you're saying the empathy thing, and I do feel like that's so important, right? Like it is empathy because you're guiding the room, but I feel like I would focus on that one person too, and just want to make them like me.
Sure.
And you can't do that.
That is any entertainer's struggle. Like I feel like it's just like high school again. We're like, I'm always chasing being like accepted by the cool crowd, full aware that I am absolutely on the like side lunch table, like getting side-eyed by people. But that's you meet your lifelong friends at like the reject table in the end anyways. So, and then you realize there's not really anything fun happening at the cool kids lunch table anyways, right?
So true.
But still, you're like, man, I kind of want to sit over there with the cool kids,
yeah,
right?
and then you do it, and you're like I imagine it like being, behind the booth as a fan, as
Sure.
a, whatever. I'm like, it's not that cool back here. It's
There's nothing.
It's
there's
crowded.
nothing. Yeah.
People are rude.
Yeah.
I can't get a drink.
Yeah. What I always tell, there's always, I think also, I'm begrudgingly bringing my friends half the time, so they just want to sit down and not deal with people. That I understand. But most of the time, backstage is just people working and lots of gear and cables and stuff that like could get stolen. People are leaving their laptops, USBs. It's like a trusted space. And if you bring, let's say, a friend you kind of know, your friend brings a friend, you're accountable for them maybe misbehaving or spilling a drink or something like that. And so once that's happened 100 times, you start narrowing that down and be like, listen, I don't want any problems tonight. Just here's some cash. I don't even want any drink tickets. Take some 20s, buy yourself some drinks, and we'll be done in 4 hours, right? I appreciate you coming with me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think if you meet an artist or a DJ and let's say when you're talking to them, they're talking over you or they make you uncomfortable or whatever, and you can tell that they just don't pick up on those things, most of those folks just won't make it as a DJ, right? As much as they might want to. To me, that's like a really core thing is to be able to pick up on making sure everybody's having a good time. The bartenders, the staff, the A&R people, that like everything is cool. And as a DJ, you physically have the best view of the floor. Like if there's a problem, somebody's like, you'll see people like getting groped over the shoulder. You can see that someone's uncomfortable, right? In a way that security probably is not like facing them straight on. So yeah, it's super essential to participate in that, right?
I think you're de-influencing the casuals who want to become a DJ because it sounds like a fun job. Like there's a lot of responsibility that comes with this.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if you're getting paid, right? If you go to a club and you don't care about it, let's say, then that's a symptom, right? Let's say you're playing somewhere, maybe you actually disagree with the company, or you think like you hate the manager and maybe they bothered your friend last time you were there. That's how you act. You're like, okay, screw this place. I'm just going to come here and do whatever and make a mess. That actually still happens once in a while, but it's almost like you're causing trouble at that point, right? When you're coming into things though, and you're starting, you're not going to know that, right? You're not going to know what it looks like when two people don't know each other and someone is maybe talking to somebody and someone is kind of pulling away. You have to have seen that enough times or heard from people that like this person was just bothering me, or I don't want to say, it comes with experience. Sounds a little cheesy, but it's like to be able to eyeball that takes, because I necessarily didn't always notice things. Like people would tell me later, like this person was being a real creep, like, or somebody I knew was being inappropriate. I was like, I can't believe I didn't catch that.
You travel internationally. You're gigging internationally. Is there something about Chicago's culture or sound that you think is misunderstood, or what is the perception from your international audiences?
I think people see Chicago as much more homogenous than it is, and like the idea of the Chicago sound, and especially there the current generation's DJs and their interface with maybe the pioneers. And in reality, there couldn't be more of a gap, right? I think I was just talking about this, it's a hyper segregated city, right? Financially, physically, your politics were crazy and we fight about them all the time. But I think that's also a good thing here. Like, people are quite upfront about that stuff, and they'll say it to you in person. And that's how you're able to stay in contact with people so long. Maybe you don't agree on everything, but maybe you have hope that you can convince them otherwise, because everything else is great except this one vote they made or something like that, it's not necessarily wrong. It's something that I personally don't want to be around, right? Or that's not what I want to surround myself with. And that we are all coming from kind of those lineages of these innovators, and that's not necessarily the case, especially like post lockdown, right? I think the contact a new DJ would have to a pioneer or somebody who wrote some of the original house tracks, it's kind of unlikely nowadays, right? Just because of age gap.
Right.
Living in totally different neighborhoods. Once you get to a certain age, you probably don't go to clubs as much either.
Right. And people aged out while others were coming in.
Right.
I feel like we constantly are in Chicago are in the state of re-educating people on the pioneers of house music.
Absolutely.
And it's getting a little bit...
But there's so many too, though.
Yeah.
Like, you kind of know who you know and who has told you that this is what's important. So I don't... Even amongst that group, there's arguments about who did what at all times, right? Which is fun, right? Because a lot of those tracks are completely different. And so the definition of house, West Side, South Side, if you were a churchgoer in a gospel, or if you're into like gay parties, like that in itself, when you take something that, like personally, I know when I was growing up, a lot of people that were really religious, that were house DJs, but it totally made sense. They came from a gospel background, and that was their influence. But that absolutely clashed with the idea of going to like a gay party, where, especially in Chicago, things are pretty wild back in the day. And I was like probably too young to see any of that. And so that ethical, and I'm not going to blame you if you grew up very religious and you were told that this is not okay. Fine, I'm not. That's not my business. But that was absolutely a factor. So I think people don't know that there were multiple Chicagos. So at the same time, there were like hard house DJs, West Side footwork stuff. And a lot of it was happening at the same time that like a Frankie Knuckles or Honey Dijon and those things were blowing up. And I think I was more in tune and hanging out with people kind of on those periphery things. So I was actually kind of unaware of the bigger picture of Chicago house. So it's something that I'm finding out a little bit more now. And it's like, I'm using the same like online resources, right? Because unfortunately, a lot of the people aren't here anymore.
Yeah, and there's really not a lot online either. There's not that much documented history about it.
Right.
And so, there is a knowledge gap. When you bring that Chicago sound, let's say you are playing one of your friend's tracks, or you're playing a classic Chicago house music track internationally, Is there any sort of surprising reaction? Like, do they know about it?
I think it really depends on the crowd and the club. Some clubs, the people that go out are far more, let's say, I don't want to say educated, but they're in tune to specific songs, right? Especially things that are like we would consider those hits, though, right? So like, whether they were like very significant in the history of Chicago house, right? In the past, I would kind of consider that like cheating to drop something like that.
So we're talking like Percolator.
I don't have it in me to play Percolator because I can't do the dance. But something like Larry Heard or something that like might not get a reaction in Chicago, but in Berlin, people are like, "Oh, this is Chicago," right? Sometimes you're like playing it because you're like, "Oh, I have to play something that's like representative Chicago," and I'm like, "Well, that's corny. That's the reason I'm grabbing for it." So there's kind of like this back and forth, but it has to make sense in that. But at the same time, I think you want to let people hear new music that maybe you only have access to, and that's a nice thing, right? So if your friends are giving you songs that maybe other people don't have, and you think they're great and would work at that moment, that's something special to share. And then when that song blows up in a year, you're like, I was playing it
You were the
first.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think Chicago house has influenced so much stuff now, right? Like it is a template for a lot of dance music now. So I could play like a Romanian minimal house that's got some like jackiness to it, and someone's like, was that like a Dance Mania track or something? You're like, no, it wasn't. It was like, yeah, something new. So I think because there is a blueprint to that, and those producers had such a distinct sound, people have distilled that now into other things, and for good reason, because it was good and it works. And so I don't necessarily always go back to what I consider like classic tracks, unless like I'm losing the dance floor or something like that. I'm like, I better pull this hit out or something.
Yep. Break the glass for emergency only sort of thing.
And then there is always this respect you want to pay to people, especially if like you just ran into them or something and you're like, oh man, I totally forgot about how amazing this person's songs were. And you're playing like half a set of their catalog. But yeah, it's a tough thing to say because there's so much music coming out of here compared to many other cities. So Chicago sound, from techno to house to tech house, I think all of it has a flavor, right? Even modern, let's say like kids that stylize themselves after John Summit, like that's a thing now, right? Where I see John Summit as like a newer DJ, but in the grand scheme of things, he's not. He's been DJing for a while now. And you have a generation of DJs who have, and producers who have patterned themselves after them. So that's just as much a valid thing coming from this area. So
yeah, that's a great point.
Still, though, there is always the anthems that I think not everybody agrees on, though. I think what you consider your Chicago anthems and your classics tells a lot about your background, where you grew up, who you hung out with, stuff like that.
What are they for you? I'm going to put you on the spot.
Gosh.
Give me like 3 of them.
3 of them. Let's say Lil Louis Blackout, DHS, House of Gods. What else do I play all the time? DJ Funk Work It, I think.
All right.
Yeah,
I'm going to insert those in the social media clip.
Fantastic.
I love it because you will get different answers, I'm sure, from every artist.
Absolutely. And that's what's great about it. Like, you can take people from same generation. And if you grew up on the West Side, your definition is totally different than if you're from the South Side. And so I don't think you see that as much in other cities. Like in New York, the New York house DJs, it's pretty set who the heroes are there. San Francisco, LA, just because there weren't so many of them, right? Yeah, people here like made a lot of cool stuff, made a lot of junk too. But yeah, because of the amount, I think we just have an enormous back catalog of cool stuff.
Yeah, I agree. Obviously, the answer to this is you're enormously talented, but how did you take your career from Chicago to touring internationally? I mean, you're hardly ever here. And to break into you're playing in Asia, Australia. I think the last time I tried to connect with you, you're like, sorry, I'm in Australia. Like you are everywhere. So how did that happen? Was there a strategy behind that?
I would say it's like there's the romantic tale of that, and then there's the realistic tale of that, right? So the romantic side of me is saying, like, I put in all this hard work. I worked at all these studios, worked every possible music job there was to try to, like, do whatever my idea of, like, networking or whatever it might be, which probably did nothing. Hanging out at clubs, partying with people. But realistically, there is this business side of things. And so you can only go so far on your own and talking about yourself. And unfortunately, and this is my case only, probably not everyone's, it took external factors. Some people on the outside saying, I see value in this, or I can do this and this, where I've no idea that's even a possibility. And I'm sure you've run into people, they're like, well, if only I had an agent, this would change my life completely. And I always tell people, like, the agents are professional sharks. Like, they will find you the second that you start becoming a profitable venture, right? Don't worry about that. They're looking for that at all times, and they are professionals at that. There's a little bit of kind of deciding for yourself, and for me that I did want to take this seriously. I didn't want to keep losing money on this. I mean, I think all of us are still in debt to the music scene. Like, everything we've invested in through our careers, even if we're making money now, it's not even caught up to what we've put into it at this point. But I couldn't afford for it to be a loss anymore, right? And so for me, I wasn't finding much opportunity in Chicago. I wasn't playing at the cool clubs. I was not hanging out with the cutting edge kids or whatnot. And so I started to kind of just venture outside of Chicago, thinking that it's like any business. Why am I going to keep going where I'm not necessarily wanted or there's no opportunity? It's like showing up at a store that's not hiring and asking for a job. I started to think, well, I'm just being crazy by trying to be included in something just because that's all I know, right? So really venturing out, going to other events and trying to find places that maybe I fit in more. That being said, that is a privileged scenario, right? Like, it does take money to go to party in Ibiza or party in Berlin. So it's hard to say, well, you should just be out there,
Sure.
Music Week, you should be out there at Berghain.
I agree, but I do think if you want something bad enough, you have to find a way to make it work, even if it's scrappy, right?
Absolutely. Like you trade in eating sometimes, or
Comfort.
you trade in your car.
If you're willing to sleep on a floor. I mean, some are.
the cases that things just happen is a fallacy, right? There it has to be a lot of intention to get it above kind of just a casual thing, right? I would say almost every DJ producer that I know, they check all those talent boxes. They check the charisma, whatever things. But where a lot of people get stuck is they think those are all the check boxes. They don't necessarily see the stuff that doesn't get talked about because you don't want to say, well, I had to work with this agent or be working with this group of promoters and agree to this year-long thing of shows. That's not necessarily fun, right? Or you're working on a writing team and writing music for an artist, and that turns into shows. But at a certain point, you're going to find whatever tactics work for you, right? And if you really want it, it just starts to become clear to you, right? Like, but that it's so different for everybody. Like when people ask me for advice, it's so specific to my circumstances. I was lucky that a lot of people that I was making music with and partying growing up, they ended up becoming quite famous, or friends of mine became famous movie stars or TV actors. And so those leg ups, they're not insignificant though, right? Like, so.
Yeah. What I think this ties into is you're talking about the importance of just being out there in person, IRL, because a lot of people think that the ticket now is social media, and it can be.
It can be.
But you, and we talk about what happened to your social media now, your social media wasn't showcasing your DJing necessarily. It was, but the ratio of that to shit posting was, in favor
Can we swear?
All you want.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, this isn't, oh wait, they swear on Sirius too. This isn't FM radio. Your shit posting ratio was much higher. So am I correct in assuming like just being out was a quicker accelerant?
I think for when I was doing things, that was a factor, right? In the end though, it's also like, let's say it's another artist. If you have not been involved in this or cared about this until you saw this as a business opportunity, am I even going to take you seriously? That you one day woke up, saw something, and you're like, this is what I'm going to do for a living. Whether it's programming or DJing or whatever, you've shown very little interest in this before. How likely are you to make it, right? And I think there's always these levels to these things, and you can never judge it when you're on it, but there is this like 1%, and that's who people are comparing themselves to all the time, like the ultimate success stories. That's who we're seeing on social media, right? We're seeing like really the cream of the crop, the most successful DJs in the world making the most money. If when you say house music and you can only rattle off 30 DJs you like, you're really talking about the 30 most famous people or most successful people at that time. And there's this whole world in between there, right? I think going out and being engaged, I think it's weird if you really like music and you're not. Like if you love a certain type of something, this wasn't really readily available when I was a kid though. So that's how I had to go and hear it. Maybe now you can absorb community and culture through Twitch or communities online, but those tend to stay in those spaces then, right? So if you're like, okay, I want to play such and such club, and you've never been there, what are you talking about, right? So you're not even being realistic about what your goals are. but it's also like when people go out with the intention of like networking or meeting people, that is just as, I don't think that's really helpful either, because they're kind of disingenuous connections, right?
And you can always tell
You can always tell
when someone wants something from you.
Absolutely. And that's like a muscle you build, unfortunately. Like until you're in a situation that they're asking you for things, or like they want to collaborate with you. They're like, we should do a track together. And you're looking, you're like, you've never even played a song of mine. Why would you want to make a track with me, right? You start in, and personally that's made me pull away from people a bit. Like I'm already antisocial by nature. So when people just kind of start talking shop with you in a place that you're like, oh, I just want to kind of like have a drink and have a good time and listen to music, then you like tense up. You feel like you're at work basically, right? And you're not having fun at the club suddenly because this person's starting to talk about all these things you're trying to not think about at that moment, right? And if you don't, like every city in every country is different, right? The music that generation grew up on, what's hitting at that time, what's hip, what's offensive, what is wrong, what is not appropriate. If you don't get a sense of that and go into another city just kind of being like, yeah, I'm me and I'm doing whatever I want, it's not going to work out well for you either, right? So it's just like being a tourist somewhere. You need to be respectful of these places you enter, right?
Great comparison.
Because if you show up and you just do whatever, people don't really appreciate it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's you learn so much more from just observing. I feel like people just want to take the shortcut to get their problem solved or get questions answered. Like, what's your advice? To compare it to just something I can relate to, like I'll get DMs from people saying, I'm a DJ trying to do XYZ, blah, blah, blah. What advice can you give me? And it's like, I don't know you.
Sure.
There's so much context here missing. And also, you're just bombarding me in my DMs. So it's, by comparison.
Sure.
And it's like,
why don't you hire me instead?
That part.
Yes.
That's number one. Number two, it's like, why don't you just like follow, look at some of my content, engage, or for an artist, go to that venue, just observe. I've learned so much more from observing rather than like bombarding people with questions. And then if you do want to get to know someone, instead of, asking these questions where it's so obvious you're trying to get from point A to point B ASAP, ask about their story. Like learn genuinely who they are, because then you're going to get the nuggets of information like, oh, you know what? That kind of applies to like what I'm doing. That's how
Sure.
I've always learned, by just hearing the other person's story unadulterated, like with no no true intentions beyond just curiosity.
Yeah, and I think like you could end up making a friend there too, which is even better.
That's the best part. Yeah, that's
right?
the best
And
part.
It gets messy because this is the music industry, and in the end, we're somewhere that's trying to make money. So that does cloud the waters at times. And if you're there working, you're there with a certain amount of intention. But like, if you really love music, like if it really does mean something to you, then there is this like alchemy, unexplainable element to it that you cannot explain to people why you are compelled to do something, whether it's good or bad. You're just kind of propelled in a direction, and like I think it's fine for people to see. Like I could never, when I started DJing, it was never a career option, right? It was like it was a social thing. It was a way to make friends. It was fun. It was playing with technology. It was all these it was everything but money. Like we're bleeding money to get to do this. So what a bonus to be able to do it as a job. So I think if folks look at this and think, well, this is a potential moneymaker for me, or this is going to make me famous, or all these things that people yourself, you have to think about your own consumer habits. Like, why do you like this band? Why do you like this DJ? Why do you like this actor? It's really hard to describe, right? If I were to say, like, what is it about this anime or something, or distill a song, I can't really explain it. I just like it, right? Mm-hmm. And the more that you sit there and take it apart, the more maybe that song will lose meaning to you, or kind of be this thing that when you hear it on the radio, you're like taken back to this thing. Like, oh man, this track rocks, and you turn it on. You kind of need to leave that precious a little bit. And I think it's fine for people to approach this as a career, or say, I want this, right? That's totally a fair assessment. Like, I want to play at this club. I want to release on this label. I want to hang out with these people. I want to get this bottle of liquor for free when I DJ, or whatever little dreams you might have. It's totally awesome, right? Like, but you also have to be realistic, right? Like, those things you're seeing, what you're seeing on social media and what you're seeing broadcast to you is a very cleaned up version of that. And you're seeing the pinnacle of that most of the time.
Right.
Not us dragging each other through the alleys, which that's 99% of all of us. We're just doing a thing. We kind of think we know what we're doing. And then the next day, that thing is not working again anyway. So it's so hard to explain, but at the same time, it is important to give advice and to say, hey, here's what has worked for me. Or you want this person's email address or contact, like, don't text them and send them SoundCloud links or something. Or just give people advice, especially if you see something in them. You're like, wow, I can see this really working out for you. But you keep doing this stupid thing. Like, you got to stop doing that. That's totally holding you up, you know?
Absolutely. I think the tough love and the mentorship from other people who have gone through it is going to get you so much further than anything that you could pay for, or whatever books you can read. You have to experience these things and make your mistakes,
right? It's like with friends. Let's say you have a friend. I'm sure you've dealt with this, and let's say they have a perspective on something you don't necessarily agree with, or maybe you're even shocked about it. You're like, whoa, where did that come from? You're probably going to make a little bit of effort there, right? Versus just being like, I'm out of here. I'm not talking to this person. I'm blocking you. You're going to make some effort with something you care about, or you want to correct because it's important and you want to keep that relationship going. It's the same thing with music, right? The people you're working with or working alongside, if you really believe in them or you care about them, then that rough road up, even if it's constant, it's worthwhile, right? But if you don't know this person and they're already on this road with you, it's kind of unpleasant, right? Mm-hmm. And especially if you do offer management services, professional services, consulting, and people are saying, well, you got to support the industry. The industry is so many facets of that. That is making sure people like that can make a living off of that so they can get good at it. So it's not an afterthought, right? It's not this thing you do after you take your nap after work, right? Because you're then spending 10% of your brain on that. So how good can you really be at it, you know?
100%. You got the rug pulled under from you pretty recently. Actually, right after we first met at ARC, and I remember I was trying to type in your username, and it wasn't coming up. I'm like, did this bitch block me? Did I offend her? I couldn't find you.
My Instagram got deleted.
Oh my God, talk about a rough road. So what happened?
So, first off, it's completely my fault. So I had a meme page that had been running for years. I used to also work in other media outlets doing, done radio, I've done writing, video game reviews, all sorts of stuff. So I've always kind of just been on the internet, just posting dumb stuff. So once being able to post funny pictures became a thing, and a compulsion kind of in a way that got out of control during lockdown because I had nothing else to do. But I didn't own any of that. And copyright is a real thing. And I got dinged for it multiple times. And unfortunately, the one thing that got me was a series of AI images, which I understood by the terms of the platform were not copyrightable. And copyright's a very specific thing, right? And went through a whole process. Basically, I'd gone to AD, landed, and all of my social media was disabled. And probably the worst time too, because you're like you're trying to get things done.
That's one place you can network without being weird.
You don't know anybody's real name ever, right? You're like, they've got some like cat picture or something as their icon, and like you're like, what was their name? You can think of like their alias or something.
Yeah, but it's so hard to find people again.
It's so I'm in the process of that. So I got hit with a copyright violation. And unfortunately, and I had a lot of people at Meta try to help out.
That's nice.
Bless their souls. But it's a legal thing. And unfortunately, it was a creator account. So I was monetizing the page. So we hit this point that the option to pay back what I've been paid by the platform came up, and I was like, I'm good. I'll just start a new page.
Wow, I didn't realize it was that serious.
Yeah, but it's also like it was also just a meme page. So it's I
did look forward to them every morning. And I remember we talked about how that it was like, you were talking about how as a consumer you look at what you want to see, and for you that wasn't flyer, look at me do this, look at me do that. The memes brought smiles, it was funny, it was cathartic for you, and it was a great marketing strategy because it just differentiated you. And so it sucks that it's gone, but did you kind of know you were skating on thin ice?
Oh yeah, I got reported all the time. I think it was so I would get shadow banned all the time. And I think one day like Gwyneth Paltrow had reposted one of my memes, and I just got like spam reported. And it was something kind of somewhat offensive. And that's when I knew, I was like, oh, this account's going to get taken away. So I always kind of knew it was there. But at the same time, while social media is important, it's just a page, right? It's just a thing, and you can rebuild it. And like people would sometimes criticize me and say, well, you get bookings because of your social media page. And I'm like,
that's stupid. That's not, that's,
I mean, sweet if so, but
yeah,
I did
hardly
so much,
doubt there's a correlation there.
Most of the time, people go looking for something. So when you rebuilding a page, people come looking for you if they want to again. So
yeah, I did.
Doors open, come back.
Yeah. I mean, but you've had some pretty steady growth on that page, and I know you're posting show stuff too.
Sure.
Do you ever get a little afraid when you're about to post a meme? You're like, this is a risky, or are you not monetizing anymore? How are you managing that?
I'm making very little money off of it. Help me. I am monetizing still, unfortunately, not to the same degree. So I can't buy as many Labubus right now.
That's where you were before this.
Yeah, I picked up my Labubus and I was late to the podcast, but I feel like I won. I should have brought you one. Sorry.
That's okay.
It's if I'm looking for a DJ, I'm looking for a DJ. I'm going to put their name in and search for them. They're not just going to pop up on my feed. I can't say I've ever gone to a show because I ran into something scrolling right? Nowadays, I'm sure you run into this. You're probably seeing 30% people you follow, 70% stuff that you don't follow, and it's the algorithm is feeding it to you, right?
Yep.
And sometimes it's really entertaining. You're like, algorithm is cooking today,
Yeah.
right? This is great.
For sure.
Sometimes though, you're like, what is this?
Yeah.
You know?
Mine is mostly dog videos.
Okay.
To be honest.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think I
That's
spend
very
enough
wholesome.
time. It is. It's
Yeah.
very wholesome. TikTok's a different story.
Yeah.
I feel like all my news feeds are very different, but that's the common denominator. Except the explore page can get a little weird. I'm like, how did that show up?
So I made a Threads account
Yeah.
and I don't follow anybody on there. And so it just throws me the most random, like, red pill crazy content. I'm like, how is this?
That's so-
thinking this is what I want.
That's like
right?
the default. Yeah,
Yeah.
mine's just all guru shit, and it's
Yeah.
like Chat GBT car washed, and I'm like, okay, it's like same post, different fonts
Yeah.
kind of thing. Yeah, but no, I mean, like you've obviously been known for that, but I don't think that has a correlation to you getting booked internationally.
There are some promoters that will look at your follow count and think that has some, but that being said,
Doesn't.
when I had 100,000 followers, I wasn't getting booked. So I don't necessarily say that necessarily has a correlation. And in fact, I've had many promoters be interested in me, look at the page and be like, what the fuck is this? We're good. This is a little weird for us, So,
Yeah, but it's authentically you.
Sure. And I think I would not be able to just post. I have a very boring life in reality. So for me to try to like make it look exciting in any shape or form would be totally disingenuous. So some people I think have really exciting lives that they can document, but that's not me. And I'm genuinely just kind of scrolling around on the internet for 80% of my day, and I'm totally entertained and okay with that. Probably not good advice for people, but that's where I've ended up. So I think to not put stuff out there, though, is also a mistake, right? So I have a lot of really talented friends. Let's say they make a track where they're really great DJs, and they're waiting for something, and I'm like, are you super religious that you think there is some deity controlling things and is going to be like, you're a good person, so you're going to get this booking, you're going to headline this festival because you're pious and kind to your wife? Unfortunately, that is not how things work. So you do have to let people know what you're doing at a minimum, right? Like, and the previous establishments, the magazines, the ways people would communicate 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, those don't exist anymore. And the reality is, if you're a 21-year-old person, this is how you hear about stuff. Some people consume all their news through TikTok and don't turn on the television, radio, whatever. And like, I don't necessarily understand that perspective, but you can't say that's not a fact at this point. So then to think, well, this person who is on this platform is not my fan. Well, you don't even have a single piece of content on this platform. How are you going to expect this person that consumes everything through there? Whether or not you think that is the right thing or not is irrelevant, because that is what they're doing. So trying to, let people know it's okay to say, here's what I'm doing, showcase it in a beautiful way, right? If you're going to post a video, don't post a shitty one, right? Like, post one that is like inviting. So if a promoter or even a friend, or you're trying to like hang out with a girl or something, and they look at that and they're like, oh, this person's cool. you have control of it in a way that you never had before, right? You would have to get written up by a magazine before or get a review on a blog or something. So it's actually an excellent opportunity to kind of control that narrative. But at the same time, you got to know that's what everyone's doing. So you're seeing this super processed thing. People aren't going to post their ugliest picture. They're not going to post the bad thing they did that day. So it's not reality, right? And I think generationally, or even you take even like 10 years apart, everybody deals with social media differently. It has a different relationship when you start gapping ages. And so you can't necessarily process how somebody 10 years, 20 years, or 10 years older might have a relationship to this thing. I know some people still like treat their phone like my parents do, and they're like, it's not a thing.
Or you see, I was at a show, I was in New York this past weekend, and I saw someone who maybe like in their 40s or 50s, they had their phone up like this, not like this. And I was like, that's cute, That's like, that's
I do that. I like widescreen.
Yeah, because they're not intending to post it anywhere,
Sure.
So it is really interesting. But I like what you're saying. It's basically like, this is the reality. If this is, you have to accept it.
It won't necessarily always be that way, right? So,
yeah. I think we are starting to value. I hate that the boomers were kind of right about the in-person thing, I don't think, like, I'm not talking like everybody should return back to office.
I don't know, but
But I do feel like shit gets done faster when I'm in person. Relationships develop faster. Work gets done.
Yes.
Now, it depends. Like, right, I'm not talking about like a corporate environment where there's just like a bunch of red tape. But there is, I think we're starting to see that push back. People need...
Some of my first DJ connections were completely online. And people I had met on like chat groups or... in some like crazy thread, and a lot of those online friendships that turned into real friendships, they're some of the best friends I have now, because you're able to like kind of talk like an idiot at first. Maybe like the worst of you is there first before kind of the best of you. I go back and forth, right? Like I do prefer kind of this semi-online life, and I think a lot can be done that way. But yeah, also at the same time, I'm like, you know what, let's just get this done, dude. Like, we've sent 50 emails. Like, if we sit there in person, this is done in 5 minutes, right? But then I'm like, I don't want to actually see a person. That's so awkward.
I'm more with you on that. I am more antisocial, and I do think that it's a very interesting thing to be more reclusive and, more introverted and be in this industry. It can seem very draining if going out and there's a lot of interactions.
But I think that draws, for me, a lot of people that I'm friends with and that are DJs and producers. They're very similar. And so it's because you're looking for your group and your people you might get along with that you're not finding in the wider world of things. And for me, that was going to clubs like that had maybe a certain thing about them, or I was like, maybe I won't sit at home alone tonight, like talking to myself. I'll make some friends. Sometimes with people that are very antisocial, or when you have like loud music, you're not even really talking either.
Yeah, you're not supposed to be.
And you're like, and you can't. You're like, what?
Yeah.
And when you're short like me, everyone has to bend down every time they talk. So I think that's part of it eases that social layer versus like raw dogging it at like a cafe or something like that, right?
Yeah. Sports bar.
But it's different now, right? But it comes and goes, and it depends on the place. And it depends. I was just talking to a friend about this. Like, if you go to, let's say, a club or a bar that you regularly go to, do you really see the same people regularly anymore? That's not really a thing I'm seeing in Chicago much.
Yeah.
Where there was kind of a safety before that I could go to X bar and at least the same people were there from a couple weeks ago, and you start to kind of form maybe a very shallow relationship, but they're like,
but it's familiar faces.
It's familiar, right?
Yeah.
And like you start feeling more comfortable, you start feeling more safe. And some of those people do turn into friends, right?
Yeah.
And like, I think all of this, it is people looking for like, friends, companions, community, relationships. It's also just like, you just don't want to feel alone, right? And I think music fills that gap. First, your interaction with it, and then your love for it, right? When someone loves the same song and you're singing it together at the concert, you're like, that's my girl.
100%. I was thinking about this the other week because I had to go to a baby shower, which
Fun.
I can't.
I just
can't.
went to one, yeah.
And I realized that everyone knowing the same pregnant person is not a strong enough common denominator to make me want to socialize with strangers.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know anything about these people, and I would have to do a lot of investigating to figure out if we have any common interests.
You're tiptoeing a little bit more actually then in those circumstances.
But
right?
like if we're all at a club, I know you all fuck with the same music as me. If you're seeing that DJ or whatever, so you do let your guard down in that regard because you understand. Like you're like, we're all here intentionally. Like we bought the ticket or whatever it is. Right? We should be in bed, but we're here. So you're right. Like it does. There is a comfortability.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, the scene changes. It always changes.
It always changes.
And there's always going to be curmudgeons online bitching about it.
Sure.
Last question for you. Do you think, especially for the artists who maybe are starting to tour a little bit out of their home city, do you think your relationship with Chicago has changed since you've been touring all over the world?
I feel like I don't necessarily know what's going on in the city. You hear about some of the kind of negative things. You always hear the bad stuff, right? So you're less involved with maybe business decisions or even at the studio, right? So I'm over at Music Garage, and so you just run into your peers and you know who's there till 3 a.m. every morning working on music. And so they could be like an EDM artist or they could be a drummer. But like the fact that you're both leaving at 3 a.m. exhausted, trying to just like do this thing that's probably ridiculous that you think you're going to succeed at it, but you keep doing it. So you're like, wow, that's awesome, right? And you're super proud of them when you barely know them and they make a style of music that maybe you would not necessarily be into. But when that person hits it, and that's that person you saw every morning at 3 a.m., you're like, fuck yeah, dude. Like that is really something that I do miss. And I used to see where people are getting frustrated about the scene in the city, and you don't want to see people hurt or sad about it, right? That's the worst outcome of dance music, and what should be festive and a good time is a bunch of people with their feelings hurt, whether it's whoever's fault it might be. End result, they're unhappy. And if it's because they're not getting shows or they're not getting the optics that they feel maybe a promoter should be giving them or an individual, that's the reality too, though. There's a bunch of people that are feeling unseen or not represented or left out. So when you start having a bunch of people feeling left out, that's That's not a good thing. But that also comes with the territory of having so many people in a business right now. Like there's more DJs than ever, right? And I think every generation says, well, there's too many DJs, right? Per capita, everybody I know is a DJ, which is great. But if you look at how many well-playing slots there are in Chicago a night, it's a fucking bloodbath to be one of those people. And so you want to help people be realistic about that. But if they really think that is where they want to be, and that's what they want to do, and you can help them in some way, then I'd like to do that, right? But not if they don't have a plan, right? You can't, people that just come to you with like a want list, like I've got crazy wants, right? And I'm not going to list them off because they're that crazy. But sometimes it comes off like that. People are like, I want this, this, and this. I want to be Fisher, basically, right? I'm like, well, Fisher is Fisher. And Fisher has that title alone. And so, especially now also, I don't know when this is going to air, but like, we're not in the best economic situation in the city right now.
Yeah, 2 weeks. We'll be in the same situation in 2 weeks.
Everything is tight. And so you're in a situation that you're asking people to spend money on entertainment, which is like, you kind of also, you got to feel guilty about that almost. Like when people are having a hard time paying for food, to be like, you should pay this cover, please, and come see me, DJ.
I did find out though from the fuck was it? Not Morgan Stanley, one of the wealth management, whatever. That live music is the last thing people cut in tough economic times, and I think that's a testament to what it does.
Yeah,
healing is an escape.
I think there is this imbalance right now that hasn't been in play before, where I think, I'll admit it myself, like I'll be on the same lineups half the time, right? I'm totally different party. I'm playing with the same DJs that next week. I'm like, well, this is weird. Who wants to see this? I think it's kind of corny. We're all back together. I mean, it's nice. You start to become a repertoire with folks, but mix it up a little bit. There is so much. Every person and DJ, I think, is bringing these unique things, even if they are, say they're what we think is like a traditional DJ or playing like popular music. They're going to play it differently than the next person. And generally, there is a crowd probably for everybody. How big that crowd is, where that crowd is, who that crowd is, that nobody knows, and they've got to figure that out for themselves. But I do want to spend more time in Chicago, and I think there's so much cool stuff happening here. I spent so much of my time trying to run away from this place that I think it's kind of a shame too, right? So we'll see, right? I think part of it is also I'm not like superstar DJ where I can say where I want to play. Like I don't necessarily know much about some of the shows I play or what's being laid out, but you have to trust the people you're working with that these are good shows and there's a plan there, because I'm really bad at planning, and that's why I have to work with people to make those kinds of plans. So,
well, thank you for being so vulnerable and honest.
No, thank you.
And for these
I'm
nuggets of wisdom.
glad we got to hang out again.
I know. Me too.
And I'm not like dying from arc weather like last time.
That was insane. That was a scorcher.
That was a scorcher.
That's your weekly elevation. Sometimes the most powerful conversations are the ones that simply tell the truth about an experience without trying to package it into neat takeaways or action steps. So refreshing. This glimpse into the life of a touring DJ reminds us that behind every success story are countless moments of doubt, financial strain, but also resilience, whether you're playing in Chicago or cities across the globe. It's a reality rarely discussed, but universally experienced by artists building careers on their own terms. Remember, success in dance music isn't about luck, it's about strategy. I'll talk to you next week.